If Niccolo Machiavelli were alive today, he wouldn't be posting quotes on social media. He wouldn't be giving interviews about leadership. He'd be the shadow behind every major decision, the whisper that changes minds, the silence that commands attention. Because in a world obsessed with being seen, Machiavelli would win by being invisible until it's too late to stop him. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how he'd operate, not with outdated political theory, but with cold psychological rules that work in boardrooms, relationships, and every power game you'll ever face. Because the principles that built empires 5 centuries ago are the same ones that build fortunes today. Rule 1. Never show your full hand. In today's world, everyone broadcasts everything. They post their goals on LinkedIn, share their strategies in meetings, announce their moves before making them. Machiavelli would watch this digital exhibitionism and smile because these people are handing him their defeat on a silver platter. When you reveal your entire plan, you give others the roadmap to destroy it. They know your timeline, your resources, your weak points. They can prepare countermoves, form alliances against you, or simply copy your strategy with better execution. Machiavelli understood that mystery is power. He'd keep his true intentions wrapped in layers of misdirection. You'd see him working on one project while secretly building another. You'd think you understand his goals while he's already 3 moves ahead in a completely different game. The modern application is brutal in its simplicity. Don't tell people what you're building until you've already built it. Don't explain your methods until you've already won. Let them think you're playing checkers while you're mastering chess. Because once they see your full strategy, they stop being impressed and start being threatened. Rule 2. Master the art of controlled inconsistency. Predictability is death in power games. When people can forecast your reactions, they can manipulate your responses. Machiavelli would never fall into emotional patterns that others could exploit. Sometimes he'd be generous, other times distant. Sometimes he'd engage deeply in conversation, other times he'd remain mysteriously quiet. Not because he was unstable, but because inconsistency creates obsession. People can't stop thinking about what they can't predict. In today's world, this means breaking your own pattern strategically. If you always respond to emails immediately, occasionally wait. If you're usually the first to speak in meetings, sometimes stay silent and let others fill the void. If you typically agree with the group, occasionally take an unexpected position. This isn't about being difficult. It's about maintaining psychological leverage. When people can't read you completely, they can't control you completely. They start adjusting their behavior to match your unpredictable rhythms, which means you're setting the tempo of every interaction. Rule 3. Let others take credit for your ideas. This sounds backwards, but Machiavelli understood something most people miss. The person who gets the applause isn't always the person with the power. Often, it's the reverse. When you let someone else present your idea, several things happen. They become emotionally invested in making it work because their reputation depends on it. They'll defend it more passionately than you ever could. And while they're in the spotlight taking the praise or blame, you remain in the shadows, accumulating influence. Smart leaders today use this constantly. They plant ideas in their boss's mind and let the boss think it was their brilliant insight. They suggest strategies to colleagues and watch them become champions of those strategies. They stay behind the scenes while others fight for their vision. The power isn't in the credit. The power is in the outcome. And when your ideas succeed through other people's efforts, you've gained something far more valuable than recognition. You've gained invisible control over the direction of entire organizations. Rule 4. Study everyone's weakness before you need it. Machiavelli wouldn't wait for conflict to learn about his opponents. He'd study them during peaceful times, cataloging their emotional triggers, their insecurities. their blind spots, not to hurt them unnecessarily, but to have options if the situation changed. Today, this means paying attention when people reveal themselves. Notice what makes them defensive. Observe what they brag about versus what they're insecure about. Watch how they react under pressure. File away information about their relationships, their fears, their secret ambitions. You're not collecting this information to blackmail anyone. You're building a psychological database that helps you predict and influence behavior when necessary. When you know someone's weak spots, you can avoid triggering them during negotiations. When you understand their deepest desires, you can frame your proposals in ways they can't resist. The person who understands human nature controls human behavior, and Machiavelli would spend more time studying psychology than strategy, because strategy without psychological insight is just academic theory. Rule 5. Never defend yourself in public. The moment you start explaining yourself, you've already lost. Machiavelli knew that defense implies guilt, even when you're innocent. The strong don't justify their actions, they let their results speak. When someone attacks your character or questions your methods in public, the natural instinct is to clarify, to set the record straight, to prove your innocence. But every word you speak in defense makes you look weaker. It suggests you care what they think, that their opinion has power over you. Instead, Machiavelli would respond with silence or redirection. If forced to speak, he'd make the attack reflect poorly on the attacker. Interesting perspective. Or, that's one way to see it, said with calm composure, makes the aggressor look emotional and desperate. People don't remember what you said in your defense. They remember how you looked when you were defending. If you look flustered, guilty, or desperate, that's what sticks. But if you look unbothered, composed, and slightly amused by the accusation, you appear untouchable. Rule 6. Control information. Flow like water. Information is the modern equivalent of army supplies. Control who gets what information and when, and you control the battlefield. Machiavelli would never let information flow freely. He'd release it strategically, in measured doses, to achieve specific outcomes. This doesn't mean lying or deceiving people. It means understanding that timing and context determine how information is received. The same fact told to different people at different times can create completely different results. In practice, this means being selective about what you share in meetings, who you copy on emails, and when you reveal certain pieces of knowledge. You give people enough information to do their jobs effectively, but not so much that they can operate independently of you. When you control information, people have to come to you for clarity, updates, and direction. You become the hub around which everything revolves. And once you're the central source of information, you're the central source of power. Rule 7. Build alliances before you need them. Machiavelli understood that power is never individual. It's always networked. The most dangerous enemies are the ones who are isolated. The most powerful players are the ones with strategic alliances across multiple domains. But here's the key. You build these alliances during peacetime, not when you're already in crisis. When you're already under attack, people can smell desperation. They know you need them more than they need you, which gives them all the leverage. Smart alliance building means helping people when you don't need anything in return, offering value before asking for value, making yourself useful to people who might be useful to you later, creating a network of mutual obligation that operates invisibly until you need to activate it. The person with the strongest network wins, not the person with the best strategy. And networks are built through consistent, small acts of strategic generosity over time. Rule 8. Never appear too eager for power. Nothing repels power faster than desperation for it. When people sense you're hungry for authority, they start viewing you as a threat to contain rather than an ally to support. Machiavelli would never chase positions openly. He'd position himself so that power would appear to flow to him naturally. This means accepting opportunities with measured enthusiasm rather than obvious excitement. It means asking thoughtful questions about the responsibilities rather than immediately saying yes. It means appearing slightly reluctant to take on additional authority, even when you want it. When you seem like you don't need power, people trust you with it. When you appear indifferent to status, others start advocating for your promotion. The person who appears to reluctantly accept leadership often gets more genuine support than the person who campaigns for it. Machiavelli would make every advancement look like a burden he was taking on for the greater good, not a prize he was claiming for personal gain. Rule 9. Use silence as a weapon. In a world of constant noise, silence becomes a superpower. Machiavelli wouldn't try to outtalk his opponents. He'd outweight them. He'd let their words hang in the air until the weight became unbearable. Silence makes people uncomfortable. They start projecting their own fears onto your quietness. They wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, why you're not reacting the way they expected. That discomfort gives you psychological leverage. In negotiations, the person who speaks first after a proposal usually loses. In conflicts, the person who stays calm while others escalate appears more rational. In meetings, the person who listens carefully before speaking often has the most impact when they finally do talk. Machiavelli would use strategic pauses, meaningful glances, and calculated quiet to create tension and extract information. He'd let others fill the silence with revelations they never intended to share. Rule 10. Make your enemies underestimate you. When people think you're less dangerous than you actually are, they make mistakes around you. They speak freely. They don't guard their strategies. They don't prepare adequate defenses. Machiavelli would deliberately cultivate an image slightly softer than his true nature. This doesn't mean appearing weak. It means appearing less calculating than you are. Let people think you're more emotional and less strategic than reality. Let them believe you're reacting spontaneously when you're actually executing a plan you developed weeks ago. When your opponents underestimate your intelligence, they explain their strategies to you thinking you don't understand. When they underestimate your network, they reveal their alliances, thinking you can't counter them. When they underestimate your patience, they rush into action before they're truly ready. The goal is to be consistently underestimated until the moment you strike. Then it's too late for them to adjust their approach. Rule 11. Control the narrative, not just the facts. Facts don't determine outcomes. Interpretation of facts determines outcomes. Machiavelli would spend more energy shaping how people understand events than trying to control the events themselves. This means thinking carefully about how your actions will be perceived and by whom. It means framing your decisions in language that supports your broader goals. It means anticipating how others will try to spin your moves and having counter-narratives ready. When you make a tough decision, you don't just execute it. You control how it's explained, to whom it's explained first, and what context surrounds the explanation. You make sure the story that emerges supports your long-term position. People remember stories, not facts. They make decisions based on emotions, not logic. Control the emotional context around information, and you control how people respond to that information. Rule 12. Never let emotion override strategy. Anger, fear, pride, and excitement are all strategic liabilities. They make you predictable, they cloud your judgment, and they give others emotional leverage over your decisions. Machiavelli would feel these emotions, but never let them drive his actions. This is especially important when dealing with insults, betrayals, or unexpected setbacks. Your first impulse will be emotional. Your second thought should be strategic. What response serves your long-term interests? What reaction strengthens your position? Sometimes the strategic response is immediate action. Sometimes it's patience. Sometimes it's apparent indifference. But it's never the raw emotional impulse that comes first. The person who can separate feeling from action has a massive advantage over everyone who can't. They make better decisions, they're harder to manipulate, and they appear more confident and competent to observers. Rule 13. Study your opposition's patterns. Everyone has behavioral patterns. They negotiate the same way. They make decisions using similar criteria. They react to pressure in predictable ways. Machiavelli would catalogue these patterns and use them to predict and influence future behavior. Watch how people handle deadlines. Notice what kinds of arguments they find persuasive. Observe how they respond to different types of pressure. Track how they communicate when they're confident versus when they're uncertain. Once you understand someone's patterns, you can design interactions that play to your advantage. You know which arguments will work and which will backfire. You know when to push and when to back off. You know how to frame proposals in ways they can't resist. Pattern recognition is one of the most underused skills in professional life. Most people react to others instinctively rather than strategically. When you start seeing the predictable patterns in human behavior, you can influence outcomes with precision. Rule 14. Create dependencies, not just relationships. A relationship can be broken by emotion or changing circumstances. A dependency is structural. It survives personal feelings because it's based on mutual necessity. Machiavelli would focus on making himself valuable in ways that couldn't be easily replaced. This means developing skills, knowledge, or connections that others need to achieve their goals. It means positioning yourself as the bridge between important groups. It means becoming the person others rely on for critical functions. When you're simply liked, people can afford to have conflicts with you. When you're needed, they have to find ways to work with you, even when they're frustrated. The goal is to become so integrated into other people's success that they can't achieve their objectives without your cooperation. This isn't about manipulation. It's about strategic value creation. Make yourself genuinely useful in non-replaceable ways, and you'll have influence that survives political changes and personal disagreements. Rule 15. Time your moves for maximum impact. The same action taken at different times can have completely different results. Machiavelli would study timing as carefully as strategy. He'd wait for moments when his moves would have amplified impact. This means understanding organizational rhythms, political cycles, and personal stress patterns. It means recognizing when people are most receptive to your ideas and when they're most vulnerable to your pressure. Sometimes the best strategy is patience. Wait for your opposition to make mistakes. Wait for circumstances to change in your favor. Wait for the perfect moment when your action will have 10 times the impact it would have had earlier. Other times, speed is crucial. Strike before your opponents are prepared. Move while they're distracted by other issues. Act while you have temporary advantages that won't last. The key is learning to distinguish between these situations and having the discipline to wait when waiting serves you, and the courage to act when action is required. Rule 16. Never give your real reasons. When people understand your true motivations, they can predict your behavior and manipulate your decisions. Machiavelli would always offer plausible alternative explanations for his actions, keeping his real reasons private. This doesn't mean lying. It means understanding that most actions have multiple valid justifications. Choose the one that serves your strategic interests, rather than the one that satisfies your need for emotional honesty. When you make a decision that benefits you, frame it in terms of how it benefits others. When you take a position that advances your agenda, explain it in terms of principles or organizational needs. When you act on personal preferences, present them as objective analysis. People are more comfortable supporting you when they believe your motivations align with their interests or values. Give them reasons they can feel good about, even when your real reasons are purely strategic. Rule 17. Build your reputation through others. Self-promotion is obvious and often counterproductive. When you praise yourself, people discount it as bias. When others praise you, it carries weight and credibility. Machiavelli would orchestrate his reputation through third parties. This means doing favors for people who will naturally want to reciprocate by speaking well of you. It means sharing credit in ways that make others invested in your success. It means creating situations where supporting your reputation serves other people's interests. The most powerful endorsements come from unexpected sources. When someone who has no obvious reason to praise you speaks positively about your work, people pay attention. When former rivals acknowledge your capabilities, your reputation gains strength. Focus on earning authentic advocacy rather than seeking direct recognition. Let others tell your story, and that story will be more compelling than anything you could say about yourself. Rule 18. Use questions to control conversations. Statements invite argument. Questions invite revelation. Machiavelli would guide conversations through strategic questioning rather than direct confrontation. Questions allow you to gather information while appearing engaged and respectful. When someone makes a claim you disagree with, don't challenge it directly. Ask them to explain their reasoning. When they propose a strategy you think is flawed, ask about potential obstacles. When they criticize your approach, ask for their specific recommendations. This technique serves multiple purposes. It forces others to defend their positions, often revealing weaknesses they hadn't considered. It positions you as thoughtful and analytical rather than argumentative. And it gives you time to formulate your response while they're talking. The person asking questions controls the direction of the conversation. They decide which topics get explored and which get abandoned. They gather intelligence while others reveal their thinking. Rule 19. Always have an exit strategy. Machiavelli would never enter any situation without understanding how to leave it gracefully. Whether it's a job, a partnership, a negotiation, or a conflict, you need to know your alternatives and your escape routes. This isn't pessimism, it's strategic preparation. When you know you can walk away, you negotiate from strength. When others know you have alternatives, they treat you with more respect. When you're not desperate to make any particular situation work, you make better decisions within that situation. Exit strategies aren't just about leaving, they're about creating negotiating leverage. The person who needs the deal least often gets the best terms. The person who can afford to lose often wins. Build your life so that no single job, relationship, or opportunity has complete power over your choices. Maintain multiple options, develop transferable skills, and keep building new relationships even when current ones are working well. Rule 20. Master the art of strategic retreat. Not every battle is worth fighting. Not every victory is worth the cost. Machiavelli would retreat strategically to preserve resources for more important conflicts. He'd let others win small battles, while positioning himself to win the larger war. This means choosing your conflicts carefully. It means sometimes accepting minor losses to avoid major ones. It means understanding the difference between tactical setbacks and strategic defeats. When you're outgunned, outmaneuvered, or fighting on unfavorable terrain, retreat and regroup. Wait for better circumstances. Let your opposition overextend themselves while you conserve your energy and resources. The goal isn't to win every argument or every negotiation. The goal is to win the outcomes that matter most to your long-term objectives. Sometimes the best way to achieve this is by appearing to lose in the short term. Rule 21. Leave them wanting more. Scarcity creates value. Availability diminishes it. Machiavelli would never overstay his welcome or overexpose his ideas. He'd leave every interaction while interest was still rising, not after it had peaked. This applies to meetings, presentations, social events, and even relationships. End conversations while they're still engaging. Conclude proposals before you've answered every possible question. Leave gatherings while you're still enjoying yourself. When people want more of your time, attention, or input, you have influence. When they've had enough, your power diminishes. The key is reading the moment and exiting before you cross that line. This creates anticipation for your next interaction. People remember the feeling of wanting more, not the feeling of having had enough. They associate you with positive emotions rather than fatigue or oversaturation. The Machiavellian mindset. Today. These aren't just tactics. They're a different way of thinking about human interaction. Machiavelli understood that power isn't about force or manipulation. It's about understanding human nature and working with psychological realities rather than against them. In today's world, these principles are more relevant than ever. We live in a time of constant change, fierce competition, and complex social dynamics. The people who understand these underlying patterns of human behavior will always have advantages over those who operate on instinct alone. The goal isn't to become calculating or cold. It's to become strategic and aware, to see beyond the surface level of interactions and understand the deeper currents that drive behavior and outcomes. Machiavelli would look at our modern world and recognize the same human drives, fears, and ambitions that shaped politics 500 years ago. The technology has changed. The fundamental psychology hasn't. Master these principles, and you'll find yourself moving through life with a clarity and confidence that others can sense but can't quite explain. You'll make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and achieve your goals with less resistance and more precision. Because in the end, Machiavelli's greatest insight wasn't about politics or power. It was about human nature. And that never changes.